Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is Louisa May Alcott green tea from Simpson and Vale, which I selected because, well, I was in the mood for green tea. I do want to finish this tea because I'm trying to finish up some of my teas. And also because Louisa May Alcott was a 19th century writer. Couldn't really call her Victorian, but it was the era. She does make reference in one of her books to a book that I'm going to mention in this TBR, so it all comes together. So, that's what I'm doing today. I'm doing my Victober 2022 TBR. And of course, I'm always excited about this particular reading event because I do love Victorian literature so much. And I mean, not all of it, but a lot of it. And this gives me an opportunity to not only catch up, but to carry on because I do read Victorian literature throughout the year. But this is just much more concentrated. And there are so many lovely challenges because there are also so many lovely hosts. And the hosts are this year Kate Howe, Katie at Books and Things, Marissa at Blatantly Bookish, Petra Yu, and Roz from Skelly Dandling About the Books. All lovely channels. Check them out. They all have very interesting challenges, and some of them are things that I'm just going to do because they're, for instance, Petra has a read a Victorian book and watch a screen adaptation of it. Already one of the books I plan to read has a screen adaptation, so that works out. Roz has read a work of Victorian poetry, long or short. I'm usually better at shorter poetry, but I have looked around and I found a piece of Victorian poetry that I really want to read. And, oh, it's under a bunch of things now, of course, but I'm going to start with it anyway because we are mentioning it. And I have here the Oxford Book of Victorian Verse. Yes. And right in, well, not the earliest part of it, I marked it with this particular bookmark, which is kind of Pre-Raphaelite. And it's apt because the poem I chose to read this time around was Alfred Lord Tennyson, man, couldn't even say his name, The Lady of Shalott. I just thought, I don't believe I've ever sat and read the entire poem, and I really want to read Tennyson's poems. I have a biography of his I'd like to read as well. But yeah, it goes on for a little bit, but it's not incredibly long. And if I'm really into it, I might just continue reading the rest of the poems of Tennyson in here, as well as other things I don't know. But I thought, hey, that's a good way to get myself going. And it's very, it inspired a lot of Pre-Raphaelites, so that's something I'm really into. I'm still constantly reading about them and things that inspired them and that they inspired, etc. So very exciting for October. And where are we? And so then another challenge from Marissa is to read a Victorian short story, and I'm probably going to read from one of my favorite. Where is this book? I'm going to read. I have, in case you haven't noticed, well, you can't really see it from here, but I have piles of books. So now it's like, I thought I put it in order, but disorder prevails. I have this slightly worn copy, actually, because the top of it just got a little worn out from much use, I guess. I have The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which is my favorite collection of short stories because I'm not that into short stories, which doesn't mean I don't want to read other ones. Elizabeth Gaskell, I have some of her collections, so if I have a chance to read them, I might, among other people. But I haven't read any of the Sherlock Holmes stories in a few years, actually, that I can remember. I might have sat down and read one of them a year or so ago. But it's been a while, and I feel like it's time. So I thought that would be a way for me to look forward to reading a short story and to reread something, because it's always good to reread sometimes. Kate Howe has the challenge, read a Victorian work with chronic illness or disability representation. And she gave a lot of good examples. I might have at least one book that was mentioned in her announcement video. But I'm not going to specifically say this is the book for this challenge. I'm going to read the books that I picked, hopefully read them. And when I find representation or a character that has chronic illness, I'm going to note it and I'm going to mention it when I make my subsequent video. So it's sort of a search for these things more than anything. Kitty Books and Things has a, I'm gonna pronounce this word, even though I've used this word often enough. Read a Victorian Bildungsroman. Bildungsroman? German and I don't always get along. Basically, coming of age story. I heard it pronounced and I completely forgot how it was done. I'm a reader, not a talker. But anyway, and a couple of these books that I have chosen or hope to read are coming of age stories. But I didn't choose it for that reason. I just hoped it would work out. So I'm going to do kind of the same thing where I search for, when I'm reading these books. I'm going to say, oh, hey, this is actually a coming of age story. Or, oh, this has representation of, disability or chronic illness. And it will make for me a less pressured, but still a participatory attitude. And I like that. So, oh my goodness, I have things all over the place. Now, I'm going to show you first the books that are some form of group read. The actual Victober group read I have here. I've had this book for a while, and I keep meaning to get to it, but I've mentioned very recently, actually, that I have some issues with Thomas Hardy. And sometimes I like him, and sometimes I want to, say things to him like, are you kidding? I was feeling good today, and now I'm depressed. So, however, I have wanted to read The Mayor of Casterbridge, so I like that name, actually. Casterbridge. That would be a great cat name. Casterbridge. Actually, that's kind of corny, but I like corny. Anyway, so I have this, like, paperback sized, but hardback. I love this. And I like the picture in the front. It's very, dashing, sort of, kind of moody. So you will hear from me my thoughts as the month goes by, because this is one of the ones I definitely want to tackle in October. So, and then another group read that I'm participating in with Kate Howe's group. Yes, I will speak one day properly. This I might actually start before October. I don't know, but I will definitely keep it going. It has a folded up spot in it already. I don't know, lately a lot of books I plan to read, suddenly I find a big folded up spot on it, but it's a Penguin classic, and these, I don't think it probably set me back at all. Actually, book off $1, so didn't. You don't need to hear this. Elizabeth Gaskell's Mary Barton. Finally, I've been meaning to read this book for a long time, and now I'm going to. I don't know if it's particularly happy, but I really like this picture in the front. It is Hard Times by Sir Hubert von Herkimer in the Manchester Art Gallery. So, yeah, I will let you know what I think. Like I was mentioning Elizabeth Gaskell, I did read North and South last year, and I realized I still love her so much, and I do want to reread so many things of hers that I have enjoyed, but we'll see. And then here's another one that I started. I mentioned Elizabeth Gaskell because I had started North and South beforehand, and didn't get to it. But anyway, now I'm going to get to this one. I say I'm going to, and that's because I feel like it's time, and I hope that it's time. This is the one Louisa May Alcott mentioned in her book, Little Women. This is Dickens' The Pickwick Papers. Katie at Books and Things is going to do a whole long-term in published order, I think, of Charles Dickens read-along. Wonderful. I'm not going to participate in every single time, but I figure it's time to try Pickwick Papers again. I remember starting it probably 10 or so years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago now, and I didn't really care for it, but I keep hearing people quote from it and laugh, and I think, well, I must be missing something. So I think it's time for me to see what I'm missing out on. It's a pretty big book. I probably won't finish it in the month of October, but I see I got up to page 40. I guess I'll start again. I have this as my bookmark in here. It's from Alice's Teacup. Yes, released Alice's Teacup on West 73rd Street. So that's the first one. It's related to tea, and it is Alice in Wonderland is a Victorian novel, so it makes sense why I picked that. Okay, now let's move these piles away. Here is a book I picked that might be a coming-of-age story, that might have at least one character who is seriously ill from what I've gathered, and is probably my biggest one of my biggest risks for the month, because I did read a book by this author once. Oh, and now I'm going to say probably 20 years ago. And I remember liking it enough so that when I saw this book in a library sale, I said, oh, let me get it and maybe I'll read it at some point. And I haven't since. The library sale was probably like 15 years ago. So it's really time for me to get going on this one. And, oh wait, the receipt is in here. 18 years ago in October. I bought it in October though. So, it is Benjamin Disraeli, who was also one of the prime ministers during Queen Victoria's reign. So, yeah, there's a whole thing behind that, but this is probably a slightly political novel. And because I don't mind that sometimes with like Anthony Trollope, maybe I won't mind it with this gentleman as well. And this is an Everyman's Library copy of Coningsby or Coningsby. I am not sure. I like haven't seen this book mentioned on BookTube at all, so I'm going into this almost blind. I don't like to use that expression, but you know what I mean. Like, I really don't know. Oh, look, he was Benjamin Disraeli, Earl of Beaconsfield. Look at this. Look at this page. Look at this. I just get so excited about these older editions sometimes. So I will feel, even though I'm more of a person who wears green, although I do wear red and orange. This is almost like a reddish orange. I will feel like I should dress up to read this book. You know what I mean? In something slightly old school. But I probably won't. I'll probably wear jeans. I don't know. We'll see. But I will let you know, again, my progress in that. So, those are the definites. I am going to get knocked over by all these other alternative possibilities. I decided to call it that, like, pile of possibilities, alternative or alternates or whatever, because I know I'm not going to read all of these, but I also want to mention them so that I have a little bit of accountability to dive into at least some of them. And because I really want to get to these, but I might be pleasantly surprised. Well, two of these are actually books I'm reading currently by the same author, and one of them I might finish. Actually, both of them I might, but I probably won't by September because I got a lot going on in September. So, that is Anthony Trollope, The Three Clerks, or The Three Clarks, as it is probably pronounced in the UK, and that's a standalone. And I also still have the Last Chronicle of Barset, which was thoroughly enjoyable until I hit one little slow bit, and now I got to get back to it. But I know that once I get past that hurdle, I'm just going to keep running with it. I just love Anthony Trollope. But the reason why, you know, I sometimes slow down with him is that, yeah, every once in a while in his books, there's just like one little bit that I go, all right. But anyway, I think you've heard enough of my thoughts about Anthony Trollope today and in many other videos because I just love him. Here's a book that I plan on starting in October and finishing in November because it is nonfiction, so I can count it for nonfiction November. Excuse me. I hate when I'm talking about this particular subject and I start coughing. Poor Brontes. Anyway, this is the legendary biography, the controversial biography, but it was signed off on by the survivors of this person. Elizabeth Gaskell, again, The Life of Charlotte Bronte. This is the first book I ever heard of by Elizabeth Gaskell. I think when I heard it described, I heard of it as Mrs. Gaskell, because that's what you hear sometimes. I don't know what that is, but I've heard some really bad things about it in some ways, but I also have heard some interesting things. And I think it's just a work of literature that I need to read already. Last year I read the massive Barker biography. It was like 900 page plus. It was fantastic. But this was like a source material, although it obviously refuted a few things that were mentioned. But, you know, speaking of Bronte, I don't know if I'm going to have time for this, but I really, really want to finish or read, actually, because I've never finished it. I'm so sad this side of this got a little bit folded up. But anyway, so I read a couple of years ago Shirley, and I have this copy of Shirley and the Professor. I have never read The Professor, and that is my last of the Bronte novels that I have not read. I know a lot about it, but I haven't read it, and I know it's not the best one. I also know it's short, so maybe if I can, see, this is in this book, this is how much it is. So maybe I could tackle it, and I could finally do a ranking of other Bronte novels. So I don't know if I'll be able to do it in October, but Stay tuned. And then I have two Viragos. If you watched my recent video of my Victorian and Virago modern classic haul, you will notice that I have quite a few, and you can see it even in the corner here. All that green are my Viragos, and they keep growing, and I quite like them, but I haven't read enough of them. And so I would like to read one or both of these. I don't think I'll finish them. This is a recurring thing to say. I don't think I'll finish them in October. But you know what? I like even the thought of beginning them. And so, yeah, I don't know which one to go with first. But this is Charlotte Young, which I've heard good things about. The clever woman of the family. And yeah, I like the name. It was written in the later 1800s. But it says at the age of 25, Rachel Curtis, daughter of the squire of the homestead, considers herself the clever woman of the family, like me. Rejecting the idea of marriage, she seeks, like me, instead a mission in life. An avid reader of popular tracts, Rachel's dream is to mold young minds with her high educational ideals, but her theories are not tempered by experience, like me. And in a long and painful lesson, she comes to learn that her true mission is not the one she had imagined. I don't know. First published in 1865, okay, not late Victorian, this is a compelling novel by Charlotte Young, one of the greatest storytellers of her age. Upholding the traditions of Victorian England, so very Victorian, it gives a fascinating insight into the ways in which middle-class women were denied personal ambition and taught that devotion and self-sacrifice were the highest virtues to which a woman should aspire. That sounds a little bit upsetting, but it might be good. And then I have this one that got a little bit messed up. Some of my copies got messed up. I think I found this in the bookseller, but it has another sticker on the front, which I should probably peel off. But this is by Mrs. Oliphant, or Margaret Oliphant, and this is Hester. I keep hearing about this one, so I really want to get going on Hester. And shall I read to you? Oh, look at this. Catherine Vernon is the head of the family bank. Goodness. Reputed in the home counties to be solid as the Bank of England. Well, loved and revered by the people of Redborough, like me. She is nevertheless seen as a none too benevolent despot, like me. Sorry, I gotta stop that. By those of her family who, dependent upon her charity, live in the nearby Vernonry. Catherine is a proud businesswoman in firm control of her life, her work, and her family. She lives with her young cousin Edward, grooming him to succeed her in the bank, loving him like a son. Then 14-year-old Hester and her widowed mother join the tenants of the Vernonry, and Catherine finds she has met her match in the strong-willed girl. We watch as Hester grows up through the 1860s and 70s, and as their silent confrontation comes to a head over their love for the same man, an absorbing struggle which alters forever the fortunes of Hester and the Vernon family. That probably tells me more than I need to know. But look at the painting was by Bert. I'm also mispronouncing this. Morisot, who is a painter whose paintings I like, even if I can't pronounce her name. Yeah. So I doubt I can read both these, but I still. And here is probably my most unlikely, but still I kind of want to do this one because I've also had this book for an intense amount of time, and that's wrong. And I'm not even counting so many other. Oh, I'm sitting by a window and this weird light's coming in on top of this weird shaft over here. I wanted to read George Gissing. I wanted to read George Eliot, but I feel like I'm ignoring all the Georges this time around. I will come back to you, and who knows, maybe I will. Maybe I'll read a Wilkie Collins. There are so many writers that I am ignoring right now, not because I want to. So, but you know what? That's why I said I read Victorian novels all year long to slightly make up for this. But this is not just a Victorian writer. This is a Victoria writer. This is Queen Victoria's memoirs of the Prince Consort, the early years. So it's like watching the Victoria program with Jenna Coleman, right? I am actually curious about this, and I've had it for a way long time. I think I've mentioned it before. It has, I don't want to get too close. I don't want to mess this up, but it has like a inscription. It's hard to read because it's in pencil, but it's from someone, I think, who lived, it sounds like they lived in Harlem. I can't really tell from reading this, but it says 1867. So if this is correct, then if they weren't just making this up, then someone owned this in Victorian times. So it is really time for me to read this. Look at this picture. Look at this. Come on. So I really want to get started in this one. And again, if I don't finish this in October, this is nonfiction. So this could also, you know what I mean? I can multitask here. So I really could use the encouragement about this one by you guys if you feel the need to encourage me. So yeah, as of right now, that is all. Of course, nothing is written in stone. The first books I showed you are my most likely to pick up and really want to read and really want to finish. But if, like I said, I will be passing some bookshops in some interesting places in the weeks to come. Yes, child. In months to come, in the weeks to come, in the days to come, who knows? Time periods, it's all the same to me. And if I pick up a Victorian novel or poetry collection or something that I really, really, really want to read at that moment, then I'm not going to stop myself because I must leave room for some mood reading. Always. But that is all for now. Please let me know if you have plans for October to participate in Victober, which books of these you've read and enjoyed or not, which books you want to read of these books, all the things, all the Victober related things. Please let me know in your comments. If you are a booktuber and you have a Victober TBR coming up that I haven't seen yet, please direct me to it because I love watching Victober TBRs. It makes me so happy. And I also plan to do other Victorian related things like, oh, I don't know, taking tea. I wonder if I'll do an afternoon tea in October. I don't know. That would be so nice. But yes, all the things. And last but not least, I forgot to mention, I showed you Mayor of Casterbridge. That's the one that I plan to watch the adaptation of on film. I've seen it already, but I don't mind seeing it again. So yes, I'm glad I remembered that before I went. And so that is all for my Victober TBR. Again, for now. Until next time, this is Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and Victorian book fill day. Goodbye.